I was using his senses to see because I couldn't see a damn thing that my shoulder-mounted light didn't touch. Hercules started barking very close to the place that he had before. I suddenly remembered the 2 lipstick cameras I had set up. If I hadn't been able to find anything in the daytime, the chances of me finding anything in the dead of night was 0. I climbed the tree quickly and sat in the crook of a limb, getting my iPad out of my backpack. I frantically rolled back the video. Slowly, I saw small flickers of torchlight on screen. There wasn't one light, but several. They all congregated out in the woods for a short while, until someone disappeared under the roots of the huge tree I was sitting on currently. From the angle I positioned the camera, I couldn't tell where they went or how, but I knew there was an entrance to somewhere under the tree. I hopped down and began stomping around the base of the tree for noises I couldn't identify. I also half watched the vid feed to see if someone brought Harlii here, because if I didn't see her here, it would change my approach entirely. I watched 10 minutes in the past and saw a dark figure that could have been Seth carrying a woman who could have been Harlii, like she was a bride through a threshold. She wasn't struggling, which didn't mean anything. She could have been drugged, or worse. I ignored my inner monologue for a moment when I got dark, because thinking like that wasn't helping anything. But if it did nothing else, it put a fire under my ass to find this secret passage. I noticed on the side of the tree a muddy footprint that wasn't mine and was too big to be Harlii, that just stopped abruptly. 1 foot, then nothing. I pushed in on the tree. There had to be something right there. The dog was barking at it. People disappeared in this spot. There were footprints that ended here. I was seconds away from crying, but luckily I got a break when I saw mosquitoes pouring out of a dirt crack on the ground. I touched a big oversized root and pulled it up. It was loose, as if it were a decoy branch. When it lifted, I pulled up a hatch that the tree had partially grown over. It was metal, old, and rusted. I pulled the root up, then moved the metal hatch with my other hand. A swarm of mosquitoes rode out of the dungeon hatch in a cloud of black. I stepped back and put in ear pods. I wasn't about to go through that shit again. Hercules, who was all piss and vinegar a moment ago, was even cautious to continue into the darkness. He barked, but looked to me as if following my lead, using me as an example. I saw a faint light in the distance. This felt like an ancient man-made tunnel. Perhaps it was a bomb shelter. When I turned my light out, I felt several stings from mosquitoes tearing into my flesh. I went into my bag, having prepared for this, and liberally sprayed myself and Hercules with repellent. To my surprise, the dog didn't irrationally rush ahead, which was something I should have assumed it would do, but it didn't. It was as if it could sense my fear and mirrored my caution. As I neared the light in this forgotten bunker, I could hear sounds of buzzing from mosquitoes, and I could hear voices. I cautiously slipped into the long shadows, and the dog mirrored me. I saw random denizens of the city in a sparsely furnished replica of what the ideal nuclear family of the 50s would be living in. It got odder. They were all stark naked, engaged in sex. This wasn't sexy eyes wide shut parties. There were no A-list Hollywood actors grinding on each other artistically, but Joe and Jill any man. It had to be upwards of 20 people in this fake Roberts room, and their little cliques going at each other without shame. I noticed the woman with the bowl cut, Miss O'Neilly, bracing herself as an old man in his 60s got to work. I looked for escape vectors and saw 3 other doors I may be able to slip through. I saw the mosquitoes swirling around them, taking blood from them at random without resistance. This was fascinating, and yes, my body cam was picking it all up, but it didn't tell me where Harlii was. I heard the faint sound of ritualistic organ music playing and decided that was the door I would enter first. If I didn't know anything about this Seth character, I knew he was theatric, and he seemed like the type to listen to pretentious organ music. As I slipped out of the orgy room, I saw that the door was circular and hatch-like. I slowly rolled it closed and hoped I locked it by twisting a circular steering wheel. I was starting to realize the only way I was going to get out of here with Harlii was if I somehow managed to threaten violence and hope that these people weren't so far gone they were beyond intimidation. The next room I found myself in was a hydroponic garden, but instead of vegetables, there were pools of muddy, stagnant water where there were so many mosquito larvae that I could see it with my naked eye. Even though I had precautions, mosquitoes didn't stop feasting on me altogether. I slipped into the next room, and it was an extension of the garden. There were, in fact, flowers and plant life here under eerie lights, and a botanical garden of a respectable size. There were a few people walking naked, without inhibitions, as if they were prancing in the Garden of Eden. And there, like a spider in the center of a web, was Seth Gondry. He was dressed in elegant garb from a time period that had to be somewhere in the French Renaissance, and Harlii was laying on a stone altar, alive but sleeping. She too was dressed like an elegant French lady of that time. A few of the random citizens were dressed like plague doctors attending a wedding, bearing witness to whatever the fuck was happening here. I slipped behind a rose bush and watched as he ceremonially took a needle from one of his waiting attendants. He plunged the thing into a bowl of water one of his minions held with two hands and extracted something out of it. The plague doctor strapped Harlii down and moved away to meld into the background. Hercules looked to me. I was amazed he went this long without barking. I didn't have answers yet, and I was formulating solutions that were in constant flux from moment to moment, depending on the weird shit that I was seeing here. Seth reached under his man blouse and pulled out a small vial, which he promptly put under Harlii's nose. She woke up in a jolt.
Where am I?
She demanded. I could hear Hercules growling when he heard Harlii's elevated tone. I put a hand on the dog, attempting to calm him because I was feeling it too. "You awake, my dear," said Seth with the needle in his hand.
What the fuck are you doing?
Harlii demanded. Mosquitoes from all over began swarming around the center of the bizarre underground garden, as if they were scrutinizing this mortal ritual with alien eyes. They swirled overhead like miniature constellations. The carpet of black swept past me and Hercules in our hiding spot with little concern. The people in the plague doctor mask all revealed vials, which I could only assume was blood from the folds of their cloaks. They began chanting in Latin and drawing shit on the ground. Seth ignored them completely and put his full attention on Harlii. "You are going to be our new queen. You've seen what I have to pick from here." He shook his head. "Sort of gross-looking people. When I saw you, I knew you were going to be the one," he said.
Right. And so what are you then?
Harlii said in a sarcastic, mocking tone. "I'm someone that has been doing this for a very, very long time," Seth answered cryptically. "You must receive a queen to become a queen," he said as he held her head and slowly attempted to insert the needle into her eye. "If you don't hold still, it will hurt quite a lot," he said as he slowly attempted to guide the needle into her open eye.